Okay, so our next awardee is Christine Zhang, who is the manager of the flow cytometry core facility at the University of Manitoba. And so she started there in 2012, and she actually was involved in establishing that facility. So Christine, congratulations, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just share my screen first. Okay, can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I'll start. First of all, thank you very much for the CNSP committee to, first of all, present me the award and also giving me the opportunity to give this presentation. Really appreciate that. So I'll start by introducing myself a little bit. So I did my actually undergrad as well as PhD at the Department of Immunology at University of Toronto. I started as a core facility manager at the University of Manitoba in 2012. And the interesting thing is actually what actually led me to that career path was because of Giselle, who used to be the core facility manager at Sunnybrook Hospital, who actually introduced me in 2011, I believe. That was the third CNSP annual meeting, or the Canadian Cytometry and Microscopy Conference. And she told me, okay, how about you attend this conference? I attended. I really enjoyed it. So actually the next year I got this opportunity as a flow core manager. So I go, okay, well, why not? So I went there. At that time, University of Manitoba just started the flow cytometry core as well as 8 other scientific platforms. So the dean's office said, well, they want to also follow what other big university did and establish all those cores. So actually I got the opportunity to start a flow core from scratch. I think working with my two the directors in terms of deciding the fee structure, for example, and consolidate all those different instrument unit from different departments, coming up with a training module and establishing efficient and a good instrument operation maintenance, and as well as I oversee all the financial and budgeting and the website. So everything started from scratch, which actually gave me a really good opportunity, a learning opportunity, instead of starting, from somewhere on an established system. I'm in charge of, for example, the service request, project-based flow cytometry sample prep, acquisition analysis, various things. And we also have a flow cytometry education. I think we run the regular workshop and symposium. So next slide, just introduce to everyone of our flow core. Even though it's called flow core, actually we have a couple of analyzers. We have the Canto LSR, Fortessa, and the most recently purchased as Beckman Culture Cytoflag LX. We have one sorter, which is REO3 cell sorter. And actually, later on, we realized actually there's quite a bit of flow users who's interested in looking at using microscopy or vice versa. So we actually incorporate the Zeiss spinning disk confocal into a flow core as well, as even though it's called flow core, but we have a confocal microscope as well. So the training program, we actually have 2-level training program. It started as in one training program, and I later on realized that different users really have coming with different level of familiarity to flow cytometry. Some users are super good, super super experienced. They're right on start from knowing the multicolor panel, versus other people is like from knowledge zero and they don't know fluorochromes. So we actually have, later on I realized it's better to divide into 2. For the new users, for example, they have a separate lecture, as in 2 hours just on the theoretical background, and then later they will start the hands-on training, versus experienced users will just have the training, for example. hands-on training. I mean, we also, as I said, we have the flow cytometry acquisition, analysis, or cell sorting service, mainly for those who labs who's not, super knowledgeable or not interested in training their own people or users to use our instrument. They just want me to do it, or for grant purpose, for example. We also have what's called multi-panel immunophenotyping service. Those are for mainly clinical research labs like cancer, like head and neck, and leukemia, and recently, for example, the autoimmune disease, the IBD, for example. And for those clinicians who is interested in having us, the flow core, to run the samples on the human patient, human patients like that they start, for example, recently we have a group, IBD group, who's are actually rheumatoid arthritis group, wants to start a clinical study actually. We also have a FlowJo site license program for those who's not familiar with the flow cytometry. That's a very specialized flow cytometry analysis program. And if you buy it as a bulk, like a group, like a site license, it's much cheaper than buying individual license. So we have the site license program for those who's interested flow core users at a fraction of, like I said, individual license costs. We also upload our all of our instrument configurations, because we do have multiple instruments, on the Floral Finder, so that they can sit at home and design their own multicolor panel design. And we run the FlowCore hosted conferences and workshops ourselves, which I will talk about later. Okay, so just hop on to the challenge. I'm not sure if there's actually echoes a lot, like a lot of people have a lot of core facility has this problem. We do find that over the years it's becoming more and more a challenge, which is to keep the flow core self-sustainable while providing quality service to our users and maintaining instrument at the same time. So this is a breakdown kind of like of the most recent years where we found the challenges a little bit problematic, because as you can see, like we have multiple instruments. After you acquire, buy new instrument, then you have the first couple of years it's covered by service contract, but later on you need to at least get some basic service contract to make sure that the instrument is working well. And that FlowJo site license, it's it's also on the flow core as well, and we have other reagent, and part of our salary comes out too. So especially this year because of COVID-19, and as you can imagine, lots of user groups, which are individual PIs, their funding kind of gets a bit lower because the funding is getting less and less on the operating grant, for example. So that pose a problem on the revenue end. In the meantime, service contract, as I believe, actually increase annually every year. So it's actually, so that's why it's a little bit, we try to maintain it well, and by two solutions: increase revenue or decrease the expense, for example. But we do have a couple of approach. For example, try to reduce the expense and try to limit the region cost, as well as, for example, limit, for example, on the FlowJo site license, we start charging individual users groups. They need to pay a fraction of the fee. It's still way cheaper than what if they buy individual license. So that's the challenge. And as for the success stories, so because geographically, Manitoba is located in the middle. So it's actually not really a big hub of big center like Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver, where there's a lot of university located. So we realized that, getting the speaker, but it's still important to get the speakers as well as the company to come here and get the communication going, not just train our users to know how to operate our instrument, but also it's important for our users to learn what's out there and what's the technology, the latest technology involved for the flow. So we started the first and only symposium that's dedicated to flow cytometry in Manitoba. Our flow core actually led it. It's a full day. It's not a multi-day. It's a full day symposium. We invite local speakers as well as other speakers from other institutes. I actually run the entire fundraising campaign. So the cost for the entire symposium is actually covered by the the fundraising program. Besides the speaking, for example, besides the whole day's talks, there's also a product show in usually around 6 or 8 to 8 more special company product show by vendors that's more specialized in flow cytometry. They come here and do the product show as well. And usually it's a bit over 100 people from the basic research, university research lab, clinical end, for example, the clinical diagnostic lab of the leukemia. And Manitoba actually is where the National Microbiology Lab is located. We have the level 3 lab as well as the level 4 lab that does the Ebola. They usually, come, a lot of times they will come too, because it's hard for the company or other people to get into this facility. So it's actually, we receive pretty good feedback, positive feedback from our users and attendees, and they really enjoyed it, and we try to keep it going. Of course, this year is it's kind of hard to do because of the COVID-19, but we'll try to keep this going so that keep this communication education going. That's about all that I want to say. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity to talk. I should stop sharing.
Great. Thank you very much, Christine.
You're welcome.
Actually, it's funny, I'm a graduate from immunology at U of T as well. So I guess I left just before you got there or something like that, but funny enough. So I have a question for you. Since you started the core, you already, it hasn't been all that long, but you already have like several machines. So did you buy everything new, or were there already flow cytometers there that PIs had in their lab and maybe sort of donated to the core, or how did that work?
Yeah, so actually we didn't purchase everything. So for example, the LSR, the Canto, and the ARIA was already there. But originally it was purchased by individual labs who got them as their CFI grant. And actually they donated, and 2 of the leading PI who has those 2 instruments, they became my directors. So that's how the flow core started. I guess that, but probably eventually the PI, like individual PIs, will realize that, it's easy to, it's not too hard. I guess you can say it's not too hard, but you can get a CFI to get a funding for the new instrument. But after 5 years, those things, you need to keep it going for the service contract, which generally costs like 20 or so K plus. Yeah. And then it becomes a problem. So that's where the flow core.
So in terms of your financial arrangements with those PIs, like, do you, I don't know, like if they donate their instrument to the core, do you give them like a discount on using the instrument that they brought to the core over the course of a couple of years, or it's just really a true gift to the core?
It's I would say it's a true gift, but we have this fee structure. So usually those PIs who has the, originally got the instrument as their CFI grant, they're usually major users for our flow core. We have this fee structure we have a major user cap fee, as in, that was kind of interesting, but so when they reach certain hours, they won't be billed any further. I think that's what that cap is. So in a way, they just need to pay a fraction of, in the meantime, they use like a lot of. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I think there's a couple of questions.
Yeah, there were some more questions. What's your cost recovery through fees? How much money do you recover with your user fees in your budget?
So it's probably I would say break even, just enough to cover all the service contract, and actually, but it's not enough to cover. For example, the service contract comes in at different level. There's a full coverage, and there's basic PM, for example, which is basic service. It's not it's just enough to cover the cost for all the instruments basic coverage, but not enough to cover the full coverage. So as in full coverage, as in for example, all the labor fee, parts fee, travel fee for those BD technicians for them to come. If you get a full coverage, then everything's covered. Basic, as in they will do 2 preventative maintenance of the instrument. Any other thing they will cover, give you a small discount. So, but usually the full coverage is very expensive. So I would say just enough to cover that. So that's why I say that's relatively a challenge, especially when you grow and you have to, for example, place your old instrument and get a new instrument as the facility grow. Then the service contract becomes more and more a burden.
And since you have a spinning disc confocal on in your core, do you have a microscopy specialist there, or how does that work, having the 2 sort of technologies?
I'm the only one. I'm the one who does both flow and microscopy, because I actually, during my PhD, I was mainly in microscopy work. I actually did limited flow, but then I know a little bit flow. So that's why I actually feel pretty comfortable doing flow. I'm doing microscopy. Flow, I just learn on the job as I go. But because we're, like I said, again, it goes back to that challenge that if you want to hire another person, for example, operator, then you need to be a relatively bigger core with to cover that salary cost. So has recruitment of people been a challenge in Manitoba, or? Not really. I guess that never came into the picture mind of my directors on us, because I guess we're our user base is relatively, I'll give you an idea, it's around 100 to 200, give or take. So far, I do a lot of training. So after my training, they will be okay on their own. So it never actually became a big issue that we need another person. But I guess as we grow, that will come into the picture. So.
Okay. Does anybody else have more questions?
I guess someone asked if this is symposium I was talking about is an annual symposium. It's not an annual symposium. It's supposed to be biannual. But then, because we're a small core where it's just me most of the time. So and then running an annual symposium like that, I found out it's a little bit time consuming. So I end up doing once every 3 years because of my mat leave. So
it's still a lot of work organizing that by yourself.
But
definitely
it's actually really enjoyable experience, especially Manitoba. Like I said, it doesn't have lots of those kind of events. So when there's one, that people really enjoyed it, especially if it's a flow cytometry, specific symposium. Okay.
Great. So if nobody else,
I just ask a follow-up there. Do you think there's things that the CNSP could be doing, or if we had a flow subgroup in collaboration with the Canadian Cytometry Microscopy Group, that there's things we could be doing that would help you in organizing?
Oh, that would be great, actually, especially because even though we're small, the University of Manitoba is small, but there's that national microbiology lab where the HIV group, they have a whole host of flow cytometry instrument and Symphony and the 2 sorter, for example, there. So actually it will be great if we can, I remember there's even once there was a different conference I was thinking about, but there's one time what's called Canadian Society for Immunology conference that was hosted in Winnipeg, but that was the only time. Mm-hmm. Usually it's Vancouver or Toronto, Montreal on the other end. Mm-hmm. But
I know the group, the Bioimaging North America, we're trying to put together resources that we could put on our website to sort of standard protocols, training videos, training programs, PowerPoint presentations, so maybe that's something we could think about, just, or even like a sample of a program, or how to organize, or what's the optimal number of people to have, these kinds of things, just even so you have other people to talk about it and brainstorm ideas.
Yeah, definitely. It will be really nice event, I think. And I can also like put on the link for the CNSP, on the website, for example, help to advocate a little bit more, because I know like people, even though most of meetings is more academic research talk, but when I organize this kind of symposium, it's not research. Half a day will be the research talk, but the other half will be technical talk. And I realized that actually the attendee told me they really enjoyed this kind of technical talk combination. So yeah.
Well, great work.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay.
And congratulations again. And congratulations to all of you. Great presentations. And